And then you saw over, as you walked in, sort of the common space where people can come here and just sit down and work. We have free Wi-Fi available to those who want to just sit down and work in this facility throughout the day. So it's very multi-purpose, and at the same time, very much feels like what we say, the living room of Harlem. So again, welcome to this facility. I just want to make a couple of quick comments since my time is short, but I know that some of you are in the top 7, and to hear a little bit more about that, aren't we? The top 7 tonight, woo! Last year, or I guess the reigning, it's like a beauty pageant, right? The reigning queen or king is Montreal, as far as I know. So we're happy to see the next community get crowned. So we're very excited about that. That's going to happen here tonight, so we'll all be here. Of course, this year, the theme is the Internet of Cities, and as John said, if you were able to attend the panel yesterday, it was really dynamic, really good. Even though we sort of focused on New York, you could see how a lot of the information applied to cities around the world. So we were very proud to see our own Bruce Lincoln, my co-founder of Silicon Harlem, on that panel, and who's been a visionary around smart technology and intelligent communities for almost 100 years. He's old. That's all right. Yeah, everyone's in the club though, right, Bruce? We're all in the club. So, and then, of course, we've been working with Lou and the team here of ICF for a few years intimately, and so they've been, and we've been very honored to host them again coming up this October. So if any of you are open to come to New York in October, October 20th, we have our annual conference. And at that conference, I believe, Lou, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're willing to make some announcements that day. And that day, it will be announcing Smart 21 right from Harlem. So we're very proud of that because that happens all different countries and everything. We're going to do it right here in Harlem, announcing the Smart 21. Everyone know what the Smart 21 is? Okay, good. So finally, let me say, selfishly, a little bit about Harlem and New York. So for us, we are obviously part of a big city, being Silicon Harlem. A lot of our work focuses in northern Manhattan. You guys know some of these statistics, and that's why it's good to be here right now with you, because we speak the same language. We at Silicon Harlem have found that in a lot of our communities, and a lot of our community is built with MDUs, right, multiple dwelling units, that really intense, dense urban market. And when we do our surveys and go inside some of the buildings, we're finding that there's anywhere from 30 to 40% of people that are absolutely not connected to anything internet-wise. And a large percent of them don't have devices that are adequate for education or jobs and things of that nature. So when we see that kind of gap, as some of you may have seen in some of your communities, we feel compelled to figure out how to close those divides. And so we as a company, Silicon Harlem, have been very focused, not only working with the city, trying to be as civic-minded as possible, but also working with the stakeholders in this community to really get people to understand how important it is, not just for their individual sake to be, but for the whole entire community to move forward. It has to be inclusive. So we have decided to really focus on basically what we call a CBSP, a community broadband service provider. I want to put that out there. We haven't talked a lot about it, but we want to put that out there to this community because we're going to need your prayers and support and good positive energy, because we're going up against those big time incumbents, Verizon and Time Warner or Spectrum and all those kind of folks. So we're going up against those, although we want them to see us as supportive, because I just don't think that market is something that they necessarily want to put that much time into. There's a lot of reasons for that, and we all know. But we don't mind. We want to be on top of that. We want to go after the people that can only pay $10 a month. We don't mind that. We want to go after people that are low income, fixed income, in some cases even no income. Because what's most important is that our entire community get connected. So enough about Silicon Harlem, but I'll be around. Hopefully we can talk individually and collectively about closing these great divides and gaps in our country and continue to be a leading country in the world, not just through force, but by the fact that we're truly connected. Thank you guys, and again, welcome to Harlem.
Okay. Next. Well, we have a wonderful panel that's going to be taking over now, and in fact, we're going to have Lou Zaccarola, who all of you know, and also Doug McCullough, who's the CIO of the city of Dublin, Ohio, but I have to also mention Doug as a driver behind the ICF Institute in Dublin, Ohio as well. So both of them, Lou and Doug, will be able to co-moderate and understand this particular topic we're now going to go into. It's called the Internet of Cities and Regions. And you know, hello, can you hear me? Okay. As the planner behind this little group, we always talk about investment attraction coming into a community, the economic development of a region. It's really important, and when you talk about investment attraction, unfortunately, usually when foreign direct investment and any kind of real investment comes into a community or a region, it usually goes into urban centers, at least first, until they discover the rest of the region. And that urban, rural, sort of regional, suburban divide is an issue for many, many communities. And I think that this particular topic will begin to talk about how we might be able to bridge that divide and look at ways in which the Internet of Cities and the use of technology might be able to help in bridging that. So, gentlemen, take it over. Thank you.
There we go. As the rest of our panel's coming up, I just want to sort of reinforce what John said. What we're going to try to do today is to take a look at different parts of New York State and also the world to see how this issue can be addressed, because one of the things we like to say at ICF is that the middle of nowhere is no more. And we believe very strongly that any place can be an intelligent community. So you heard Clayton Banks talk about his vision for Harlem, and you now, many of you understand what's happening where Doug is. Doug is driving not just an initiative in Dublin, which is one of the world's most intelligent communities as it is, but also a vision for an intelligent Ohio, where Dublin will be the hub of a vision where all of Ohio eventually becomes a lot like an intelligent community. That vision actually was taken from Taiwan, where President Ma many years ago had a vision for an intelligent island, and he was going to do it city by city by city. And today, of course, we have 13 intelligent communities in Taiwan, and nobody will disagree that Taiwan is an intelligent nation. So we have the same vision for places like Ohio, where we're actively working on it. And I want to, get into this with the panel and Doug, how it's happening or might happen where you guys preside. So that's really what we're going to try to look at today. How do we get that investment and that intelligence moving not just into the center of these great urban centers, but every place that someone calls home? Because we think that will solve a lot of the national problems. So Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can begin to lead the discussion.
Yeah, and I just want to mention I'm here representing the city of Dublin, but as Lou says, representing the Global Institute for the Study of the Intelligent Community in Dublin, Ohio, USA, and we selected that name for its brevity. So.
The acronym is IICB.
You're right. But we have a unique story in the city of Dublin, but part of the unique story for all of us who are part of the intelligent community movement is the diversity of our communities and the fact that we are not just urban and we are not just rural, and the divide does not have to be competitive. Ultimately, for some of your communities especially, it cannot be. We simply cannot fight amongst each other because of county lines or city lines. They are imaginary borders, and we are all part of one community, and certainly when our citizens drive, they don't think of us in that way. So one of the questions that Lou and I spoke about earlier that I'd just like to lead off with, if I could, we listened to some very interesting things yesterday with Taiwan and certainly the way the sessions closed yesterday about political will. And certainly, particularly for those of you who have run campaigns and had to be elected or have been through this, our request of our politicians is that they come in with enormous political will, doing big things. Certainly you've run on that basis. You've said, I'm better than the person you've got. I'm going to do different and do better. Now when you come in, maybe you're ready to wipe the slate clean. And my question to you is, how do you avoid the temptation to say, I'm going to build this great thing, it's going to be a part of my legacy, without erasing all of the big work that may have happened? Some of our communities are sitting on large amounts of dark fiber. They've done work. There's a study in there somewhere, and you've kind of got to go find it. So how do you make your mark without erasing the marks that may have been made by staff who have been there for 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, and I think the best way to start that is by maybe asking our two mayors, Gary McCarthy of upstate Schenectady and Tom Roach of nearer to the city White Plains, but still upstate for those of us in New York. So, gentlemen, welcome, and thank you for making the time to be here. And why don't you pick up on Doug's question, because we think it's an important one.
Sure, it is a great question. Schenectady is a city that has a proud and extensive industrial and technical history. It was 125 years ago that Thomas Edison was there, incorporated General Electric. We're a community that had the first television broadcast. The X-ray was developed there. Just a whole litany of really leading-edge, world-changing technologies. Also, we're the birthplace of silly putty, too, so it's a wide range. So I don't look at erasing the history, but how do you build on that? And where, again, it was an industrial city, a proud history, has gone through a period like other communities in the Northeast and across the country where it had a period of decline. And I look at the positioning of sensor-based wireless technologies, the expanding the internet is really that next opportunity to bring business to rejuvenate an old industrial community. And we look really just as an opportunity to draw on the strength of the past, some of the brain power that's within the community, and then go forward, really an exciting time for technology.
Mayor McCarthy, I just want to ask you a question, because I grew up in upstate New York as well, a little further up in the Finger Lakes, and we also had a glorious industrial past. As a matter of fact, where I grew up, we exported 90% of the world's peppermint at one time, up in Lyons, right? That's why I like peppermint tea, I guess. But how have you done in terms of retaining some of that legacy intelligence that you can build on, and have you taken any specific steps to do it? Because what typically happens, right, is that the talent flees.
I was fortunate, about a year and a half ago, I appointed a Smart City Commission. Mark Little, who was the Chief Technology Officer for General Electric, had just retired. I asked him to chair the committee. He hemmed and hawed a little bit, but actually then agreed to do it. And so we put together a group of professionals that really no cost to the community, that is unequaled in terms of the skill set, their global influence, and really great position to set an agenda that will work for Schenectady, but then hopefully be replicable across other communities in New York State and really the country.
Mayor Roach, interested in your response to it.
Sure, and there's always this discussion about what's upstate, and in Manhattan they basically say anything north of the left field wall in Yankee Stadium is upstate. So by that definition, we're upstate. But by the way I got here today, shows you how connected we are. I drove 4 minutes to the train station. I normally walk, but I have to go somewhere at the end, so I need my car at the station. Got on the train 27 minutes later. I got off in 125th Street and I walked here. So that's an easier commute than if I was in Forest Hills. So, or even, even other parts of the city, certainly Staten Island for crying out loud, but more beautiful commute out of Staten Island. But it is very close and we are tied into the city. So I think with most mayors, I feel like you play the hand you're dealt. The hand we were dealt is access to transit. We have the Harlem line, which is the best of the three Metro North lines. We have the best service in the system. We're the #1 destination out of New York in the morning. We've gotten to the point now, we describe White Plains, when you talk about city, suburb, rural, what are we? I mean, we're a city, but I like to say we're like a moon of Jupiter. We're big enough to have our own atmosphere, but we know who we're orbiting around. But at this point at our train station, you have as many people getting off the train to work in White Plains as getting on the train to go into Manhattan. We have a huge number of people coming in to work, particularly from Fordham. The station at Fordham is very busy. So what we set out to do during the time that I've been mayor is we want to create an environment that's attractive to the employees that the tech companies want to hire. So our proximity to Manhattan is great for that. But we put in bike lanes, we brought in Zipcar, and we highlight our transit, and it's working. We're building a lot of residential downtown. It's leasing up right away. 50% empty nesters, 50% millennials is about what we're seeing. But bringing those potential employees in is bringing the corporations in, which is what they told me at all the conferences, and it actually worked. So we've got Sumitomo Bank taking 3 floors in one of our buildings by the train. We've got New York Life coming with 500 jobs. Dannon's moving their headquarters to White Plains with 400 jobs. Heineken USA expanded the people they had there. We've got Godiva Chocolate now and Jägermeister. So they're coming in, and then with the technology side, we're a progressive city in that regard. We do have a lot of dark fiber over the years, and in terms of building on it, it's there to be used. Now, in Westchester, we tried something unusual. The Westchester County Association organized the 4 major cities in Westchester County to get together to try and bring in gigabit. So in White Plains right now, every address in the city, every building has access to 2 different broadband providers. So there's not only is there broadband to everybody, but there's competitive broadband. So if you're willing to change every 2 years, you can get a really sweet deal. I am, but my family is not. So, as we're working on that, learning about it and building on it, it's just happening on its own. We have 3 hospitals in the city. One of the hospitals has a research department. They just brought in gig on their own. These big, somebody like a Sumitomo Bank comes in, they're looking to bring it in. So the market is moving ahead. Altice is actively out there trying to get in to some of the cities now. So we see that coming. In terms of how we use it, we have adaptive signal. All our traffic, not all of them, our traffic lights are all controlled from a central location. But now we have adaptive signals that actually monitor the changes in the traffic pattern and will adjust accordingly. And so we're using technology in ways like that. Even something as basic as parking. We have an app now that you can use at parking meters, in garages, everywhere you want. And just you enter, and you pay for your parking, and it'll buzz in your pocket 10 minutes before you're going to run out of time, and you can just hit add time and things like that to make the experience better. But I think it's we're like old school, going back to where we started, which is access to transit to bring the employees in. That brings the companies in, and that brings the tech in.
Sure. Mayor Roach, you've hit upon a very important part of Intelligent Community Indicator, that being the knowledge workforce. We have a very similar experience. And if you do ask the big companies or the small companies, what would it take for you to come here? They're going to tell you, we're going to go where we can find the workers we need. So when you ask the workers, what do you want? That's when you begin to add some intelligence to developing your community. And for us, quite frankly, it has been running trails. A lot of the workforce, the knowledge workforce that you want, they want to go outside. They want broadband, they want outside and community types of experiences. So that's a very important part. I also want to talk a bit about advocacy, but before I do that, I'd like to hear from Natalie about some of the divides. And can you tell us the nature of your city? And we've spoken a lot about urban versus suburban versus rural, and everyone has those challenges, even within big cities. So what has been the experience with you?
So thank you for this question. Actually, Belgium is a bit different. So, but I really want to come back on what Lou has said at the beginning. I think that the strategic thinking should be at different levels. So Belgium is a very small country. So I have here the numbers because I didn't want it to forget it, but it's 30,000 square kilometers. So, and 11 million inhabitants, 300 kilometers long. So when you compare that to some US or ASEAN standards, Belgium is maybe a city, a big metropolitan. So actually what we are trying to do in Belgium is to have thinking strategies at 3 levels. So at the level of cities, we have urban areas, but they are quite small compared to most of the discussions we have here. So for example, the biggest city in Wallonia is Liège, is 200,000 inhabitants. And even Brussels, so the capital of Europe, the city is 200,000 inhabitants, municipality, but the region, metropolitan region, is 1 million inhabitants. So I just want to share with you these figures because it explains our context. So our Belgian context is similar. And so what we are really trying to do is to have 3 levels, 3 layers of thinking. So we have one thinking at the Belgian level. So some ministers are trying to develop smart Belgium strategy. That's maybe the worst thing from a political point of view because the federal state has less and less power in Belgium. So economic development, digital transition are in the hands of regional ministers now. So at the level of the country, even if it would be relevant, it's difficult to have this big approach. Then we have relevant approaches at the level of regions. So in Belgium, we have 3 regions. So one in the north, which is Dutch-speaking, one in the south, which is Wallonia, French-speaking, where I am from, and Brussels. And each region, with 1 or 2 key politicians, is now developing strong strategies regarding integrating smart thinking in the strategy. And as far as I am concerned, I am actually a professor, so I have an academic background, but I have been appointed by the Walloon government to be the academic referent, academic partner, to develop the smart region strategy for Wallonia. So because we really believe that's really important to have an action at this level. Urban cities, there are 4 or 5 in Wallonia, they do things, but we are so small that we have to do something together to have a critical size.
I was going to ask you about that, Natalie, because it sounds like you've got a range of different jurisdictions where different political entities have oversight over the strategic vision. I mean, it's, you know, like you say, it's not that big a place. You would think that you'd only have a couple, you know, federal, regional, and then municipal, and, you know, like the Canadians, and let it go at that. But isn't that difficult to coordinate, or do you have a process for coordinating all of those different jurisdictions into developing an intelligent vision?
That's, of course, the tricky point, because we have, for example, the mayors, we have 5 what we call big municipalities, but they are not that big in Wallonia. And of course, the mayors really want to play a role, they want to have a specific strategy to distinguish themselves from others and to attract, for example, we have Liège, Namur, so they want to be different and they want to attract investment, money, so that's the problem. It's the internal competition between mayors. But what is nice is that at the regional level, we have now a very strong minister or powerful minister who has just set strong master plans to transform the region in terms of creativity, digital agenda. And so it's more and more powerful at this level. So the regional level is really the best. And maybe one element, of course, we are believing in technology, but our approach is really in line with what we have been hearing here today, yesterday, and last year. Technology are perceived as a tool for us. What is really key is really the governance, the way we organize things. And what we started to do for the strategy is really clarify well the governance. And so that's how they appointed different stakeholders, and me for the academic background, to make sure that the governance is clear, to transform the region, which is also an old industrial area. So we were dependent on steel industry. Mittal has bought all the things, and now everything is back to India and to Asia. So now it's really difficult from an economic point of view. So the real challenges are economic development, mobility issues, and we are trying to see how we can use technologies to improve that.
So, David, I'm just going to bring you in. Please respond to anything you heard before, but I'd like to also move the conversation towards advocacy, which we in Dublin, and as Lou says, we have been inspired by what you're doing. Advocacy is both telling your story so that you can speak about the significant disparities community to community, which may border each other. Sure. But it's also about pushing, and pushing politically, pushing the public awareness about many of these things. Can you speak about how you've addressed some of those things in your region?
Okay, I joined the Asia Silicon Valley Initiative about 2 years ago, and based on all my experience, working experience actually is from Silicon Valley. So what I observed, the success of San Francisco, how they attract the startup for the past 10 years, is really the model I'm using for Taiwan. Because Taiwan, most of the startups still want to stay in the urban area, the metro area, especially Taipei. It's about 80% of the startup were in the city. And you cannot afford to just, in one area and the rest of the island, which is still a big area. So how to attract the talent, how to attract the startup to move south or move to the middle of the Taiwan, it's a really challenge. So I look at the San Francisco, how they did it. I think it's all about people. And the people is the mayor, and also the president of the city supervisor. I happen to be a friend, David Chiu, the president. He spent a time, he is a Harvard graduate, and he has the vision.
We don't hold that against him. We at Notre Dame.
Okay. And then he started to promote how you do the tax incentive, how you provide affordable housing and cheaper rent for the, actually it's a rundown area in the city, South Market. And that's how they renovate the area and be able to attract a lot of startup founders to get into the area. And that's the model I'm going to use. Because a lot of the people, get together, it will become a community. And what we are talking about, small community. And the community is not just the founder alone. The community means, politician. It means a lot of the angel investor, mentor, and also the venture capitalist. So in order for us to be successful in Taiwan or for the southern part of Taiwan, how are we going to expand or spread the startup entrepreneurship? That's what we are doing.
And what you just described is what we describe at ICF as going from smart to intelligent. Smart is laying the infrastructure, which Mayor Roach and Mayor McCarthy are talking about. And of course, Natalie to some degree. Technology, you have to get that right. You have to lay the foundation for the new railroad. But then building on top of it, the human capital, the human mobilization, which they've done brilliantly in places like Eindhoven and in Montreal are doing that, is essential to where we need to go. I mean, that's the holy grail. And I've been to Taiwan many, many times. It's, I love it there, as
Thank
you know. But I know that unlike places, you have, your metropolitan areas have very wide jurisdiction over the rural areas as well. And so what I do notice when I go there is that there isn't a lot of entrepreneurial activity in those rural districts anymore. There's a lot of agriculture. But I didn't observe that there was much going on in terms of economic development beyond, renovating gold mines to turn them into museums, to try to get people to come up to those beautiful mountains. Is there a spread out to the rural as well, where you're trying to unleash some entrepreneurship, or are you just going to concentrate on the more dense areas in the south and the middle part of Taiwan?
Our goal is to, expand and to spread to the middle and the south. And how to do that, that's what I say. I'm going to leverage the model from San Francisco, which is you need to give a good incentive for co-working space need to be affordable, scalable, and provide a service. Even we need to encourage more angel investor in the region, because venture capital also a very localized business. So we need to have in the south, like like Kaohsiung or Tainan. It's about 300 kilometers away, and how they are all eager to have some kind of startup community in that area. They don't want their all young people go up to the Taipei metro area to do that. So that's a lot of program need to put in place. That's what we designed as Asia Silicon Valley, also to expand beyond Taipei, beyond the urban area.
Certainly, generations can all move to Taipei, and then when they begin families or they've graduated and they all move over here, and it wreaks havoc on an economy. I do wonder how, particularly in some other countries, if you could speak to your experience in your particular history, and then also from the mayors. We have in the United States barriers that are mostly having to do with our culture and our politics with regard to local control. And in the United States, our communities have determined that we are going to do it exactly like us, and whatever Lou does, that's his business, and we don't coordinate often. And that can be a real problem, but we feel very strongly about it. We overcome some of that by using things like the Intelligent Communities Forum to collaborate community by community. I think that's a good message for the Internet of Cities, where cities are making direct connections with each other to overcome some of our historic barriers, and that can go from urban to suburban as well. What kind of things, particularly outside of the U.S., are you experiencing with your cultural history that create barriers? And then I'd like to hear from the mayors on that too, if I could. No, you first, David.
Me? Okay, you say the hardware is the first thing. So we have a high-speed rail. So from Kaohsiung to Taipei, actually, it's only 90 minutes away. And to Taichung, the middle, it's only 45 minutes away. And we also start with the broadband, for the whole island. We want to create a digital island. So I think what we have been doing is to encourage a regional development. In my proposal, mostly it's the regional, collaboration or partnership, rather than go, city by city. There's too many cities spread too thin. So we would like to create also a kind of sense of community in a regional. Southern Taiwan is one region. And in that case, we can easily deploy more, venture capital or more mentorship talent, or even the co-working space can be support to each other. So our approach is really create a sense of community, rather than, we are individual, we are competing. More on the cooperation and the partnership. I hope that people can just leverage from each other.
And you also do that, by the way, category by category. I know in Taichung, which was our 2013 Intelligent Community of the Year, there's a major industrial academic alliance with the 23 universities there and all the major chip wafer manufacturing companies and all the precision manufacturing companies. Yeah. That's a formal alliance, right, that's designed to look at markets around the world and to build products and services and ideas that will address those markets. And I asked Mayor who used to be the
right.
Jason who used to be the mayor there. I said, how do you manage to get these people to work together? Because academics are notoriously difficult, except for Natalie. Sometimes, in terms of collaborating with the industrial side. He said, we have a lot of meetings.
Yeah, we have an ecosystem. We try to also identify the cluster. You want to identify like Industry 4.0, the smart machinery, that's in Taichung. Yeah. We also have a green energy in Tainan. And we want to do something different in Taipei, which is AR, VR, AI. So those are the cluster-based. And so people have more resources, can leverage each other. Just like the IC industry, it's in Hsinchu. And it's a major cluster for the worldwide supply chain.
And so you decide ahead of time which cities are going to have which capabilities. Mayor McCarthy, just to follow through on what Doug was asking, is there anything like that in Schenectady? As Mr. Little looks at sort of the future, are you guys looking at more collaboration, or are you going to go more toward the model that Doug described? It's Schenectady and then the rest of the world.
No, we want the collaboration, and we've been very fortunate in the community where our political motto is working together works. And so it's county government, city government, town governments within the county. We've generated, roughly the last decade, a little over $1 billion in new investment in the community. So it's a old industrial city that's seen a tremendous renaissance. And part of my job is how do I continue that momentum and take advantage of technology. We will, in the next 2 weeks, with conjunction with our local utility, which is National Grid, we're going to file an application with the Public Service Commission, which is the regulatory authority in New York State for utilities, under a, New York's called a REV, it's Reinventing the Energy Vision. So it will change some of the rules that we will work under Schenectady, and they're looking to see what will work, what doesn't work, and how do you really end up with a new business model. And our plan is to take this for a 24-month period, and roughly every 6 months we'll do a quarter of the city. We'll replace all the street lights with lights. We will put the cameras, put the intelligent nodes on the light fixtures. We're working initially, it's been primarily with GE and Cisco, but also looking at a wide variety of vendors who are developing different products and applications for the technology, and we're looking to how do we bring that in, kind of kick the tires, see what works, what makes our community and creates opportunity for businesses, and really the region. And the underlying theme that we always use is whatever we do, we want it to be so that it can be applied out the National Grid footprint, and then also other communities across the state or across the country or even globally. And it's an exciting time.
It really is. Yeah, and you know, it's a great concept because I don't know if Mayor Matheson is here from Stratford this morning, but the same thing in Stratford, Canada. He basically opened up the city to use it as a laboratory. He said, look, we've got all the capabilities here. We're only, I think it's 33,000 people up there. He said, perfect place to be a living laboratory for technology. And Schenectady's the same way. I mean, it's just one of those wonderful cities. And it sounds like you're building the groundwork to make that happen. Mayor Roach, a little different situation though. Now you're talking about sort of, you're getting a flow of knowledge workers into White Plains. Obviously they go into the city to work as well. It sounds like a lot of that is financial industry based. It's going a little back and forth now. How is that collaboration functioning? Because I love that analogy of you being a moon of Jupiter, right? So you know, you're your own sort of thing out there. I don't know if anybody's orbiting around you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they are.
They are, of course.
They might not know it.
They may. So it's going the other way around. It's like Copernicus. But how does that mutual orbit work now? Has the relationship changed since you've been getting that flow of knowledge workers in? Or is there active collaboration as well?
There's absolutely collaboration. I was thinking when Mayor McCarthy mentioned the motto of Schenectady, I believe if White Plains has a motto, it's liberty or death, which we had the Battle of White Plains. That's what the battle flag said when they fought the British. By the way, Alexander Hamilton commanded cannon in White Plains that held them off, preserved Washington's army, that went on to attack Trenton, and that's the history of the United States, according to the mayor of White Plains.
So you
I
won
have
the
to talk
war
about
for
that
us.
at some
Thank
point.
you.
So,
People from London, it's okay.
yeah, don't worry. We were nice about it. Mostly Hessians were killed. So you people from Germany maybe not so happy. But what were they doing there anyway? But no, the collaboration is absolutely there. And we have a couple of leadership from our New York Conference of Mayors here. And I find, you know, the best part of those meetings is really, well, not the best part, but one of the best parts is before and after and in between the sessions, just sitting and having coffee or a drink with people who are from an entirely, you know, New York State is huge. So you can have a community that's completely agrarian, and you can have Manhattan, but you can still have the same issues. So we work together. I do something as simple when I became mayor as having breakfast with the leaders of the communities around White Plains. White Plains historically, it's kind of got a unique position. We were the first, we were the location of the first major corporation to come out of Manhattan, General Foods. They built a huge complex in White Plains. My dad worked there. It was so big they had their own internal softball league. He played for Kool-Aid, and they played against Jell-O. And so, needless to say, my upbringing was low on nutrition because it was a lot of stuff like that. Then we used to have the Friday after Thanksgiving on Macy's. They were the first Macy's outside of New York City was in White Plains. The Friday after Thanksgiving, they would have a mini parade with the balloons and everything in White Plains. So we have this tie there. In Westchester County, we are absolutely the hub. If you look at a map, the roads all bend toward White Plains. The transit, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the best train service. It's also the hub of the Beeline system, which we're lucky. We have a county-wide transport system that's really good. So for us, collaboration is second nature. And we've got 3 courthouses, 3 hospitals. So it's a place people are used to coming. We're 60,000 people resident, about 250,000 people during the day. Yep. So with that in mind, it's like we're working with everybody all the time on everything.
Sure. So Nathalie, we're going to give you the last response here. If you could just speak about collaboration in your area as well, particularly as an academician as well.
Yeah, so actually I really see my role, but maybe it's a bit specific as an academic, because most academics are really in their ivory tower. I can tell you a lot of people still like that, but I particularly see my role as I want to be the link between all the actors in the ecosystems. And so I'm really trying, the Smart City Institute and myself, to link all the stakeholders. So I think I have the ability to understand what a government, politicians,